Colin Liddell. Colin, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, fine. How are you, Luke? You've been absent for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, just took a few weeks off to do other things with my life. I think it's good to check out. What's the longest that you've gone without making public commentary?
It's hard to say, really. Usually, I put something out every few days. Of course, doing a show is a bigger commitment. I just post something that's quite easy to do. It's not too labor intensive. I don't have to use too much energy. I just have to have an idea and something to say.
Did you pay any attention to the Tucker Carlson interview of Vladimir Putin or any of the press coverage of it?
Oh, yeah. I kind of waited up for days, waiting for that to happen. I was so excited.
Do you have any thoughts?
I wanted to learn more about 9th century Russian history. And, I wasn't disappointed, honestly, so I got the full story. Finally, Rurik and Oleg and all those, great names from the past got their due.
And anything going on in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, I mean, that's catching your attention? We, seem to getting an overwhelming consensus that things are not going in Ukraine's favor the last few months.
Oh, no, I totally disagree. I think things aren't going in Ukraine's favor. This attempt by the Russians to kind of sabotage the West, which is underway in America, is slowly but surely being defeated. America's going to stump up a lot of extra funding. And the kind of delay in American support has actually prompted the Europeans to throw a lot more into the ring as well, I feel. So I think, the overwhelming power of the West is slowly being mobilized against Russia. Putin's really stretching himself very, very thin at the moment, fiscally. Financially, Russia is on the ropes. And so I think, something will probably happen this year.
Meaning what?
Meaning, Russia will collapse at some point. I just think that the Ukrainians are getting more and more top-notch weaponry. The Russians are going to have real problems with their economy this year. Everything seems to be kind of hanging upon Putin having this fake election in March and being reappointed as the leader of Russia, and then hoping that Trump can cause enough trouble in America. And I don't think that's going to play out. I think Trump's he's sort of coming apart at the seams. He's been hit with these massive lawfare suits, and maybe they are a bit unfair and all that. But this is kind of karma for this guy, because this is somebody who's has a long record of cheating, defrauding, and not paying his bills. And so if they can take him down with lawfare, then it's a little bit dirty. But so what? I think this will affect his donor base. I mean, can anybody donating money to Trump? Basically, you're not donating money to Trump and his election and his campaigning. You're donating money to his legal bills, and this bottomless pit of legal liabilities that's opening up below him. So I think that's going to take a lot of the wind out of his wings. And also, the way he's reacting is not too good. He's becoming more and more of a kind of unhinged personality, ranting on about how unfairly he's being treated. And, maybe there's a little bit of truth in that, but that's not really what people want to hear. And then he's saying increasingly stupid things about the war in the Ukraine and about NATO and, sort of pissing on NATO. That's not really a good look. And then, this is against the backdrop of somebody like Navalny being treated in a very, very kind of harmful way that, either he was murdered or he was just brutalized to the point where he kind of gave up the ghost.
Is there a wider significance to people in the West for Navalny's death?
Well, I mean, it's not teaching us anything new, but I mean, this is a guy who's quite charismatic. I think it'll have a big impact on a lot of Russians as well. You see, this is probably more important because I think, Navalny was somebody who really resonated with the younger generation in, upper class, younger Russians in places like St. Petersburg and Moscow. For Putin to sort of take him out or to allow him to die in this way is a bad move. Putin's got to play to lots of different audiences. And one of the key audiences he has to play to are these sort of depoliticized younger Russians in the metropolitan areas. And what's happened to Navalny, whether it was a murder or just the accumulation of a mistreatment, that's going to be a bit of a curveball for Putin, I should imagine, especially with the election coming up. So, yeah, I think there'll be a lot of people behind Putin, on the team Putin, who'll be thinking like, Putin, he's sort of kind of outlived his usefulness. He's made his big play. It hasn't really worked out well. He's starting to make us a bit toxic. People are not going to talk to us. They're not going to do a deal with us. Putin's stimulating opposition to us. When other countries see a Russia headed by Putin, it sort of aggravates them and mobilizes them against Russia. So I think the people at the top in Russia who are, sort of on team Putin, but in the shadows behind the guy, they're going to be thinking it's time to make a change of management. So I think there'll be a few people thinking along those lines, and those people will have the ways and means to, remove Putin. And of course, if Putin is taken down, that's going to create a lot of instability as well. So, it could be a very interesting year in Russia. And, it could be very dicey all round, of course, if Russia descends into chaos. And this is the reason why, for example, the Biden administration has been trying to kind of slowly, gradually help Ukraine to kind of eke out a victory rather than sort of like pumping in all the necessary assistance and the weapons they required. So the Biden administration has been very, very timid and half-hearted in its support of Ukraine. But the way things are going, they're going to keep supporting Ukraine until Putin is defeated in some way, whatever form that takes. We'll see.
Why do you think the dissident right is so hostile to Ukraine, as embodied perhaps in the commentary of the late lamented Coach Red Pill?
Well, I'm not going to talk about that irrelevant, pathetic character, but the dissident right in general, it is to a large degree a creation of the Russians. For years, for decades, the Russians have been boosting all these kind of weird memes and fake news and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and so on. And this has all been channeled through the dissident right. It's just been pretty obvious that the Russians have had a very heavy hand in what the alt-right has done, how it's evolved and what it became. And, it's had a very negative influence because I think there is a legitimate radical critique of Western society. And that's really what, I was interested in when I was subsumed into the dissident right. I was interested in this legitimate criticism of Western society. But that was then co-opted and weaponized to be used against the West and to spread toxic memes and to stir up various forms of conflict and polarization and confusion in the West.
What are specific examples of Russian promotion or creation of the dissident right?
I think Andrew Anglin is obviously linked to Russia. The TRS cluster, they're obviously linked to Russia through Bausman, who is now in Russia itself. So there are lots of cases. Subscribestar was also founded by somebody with connections to Russia. So, if you dig down into it, and if you look at some of the things that I've uncovered on, my website and on my Who's Who in the Dissident Right, you'll see that there are lots of items of hard evidence of Russia co-opting and, distorting the dissident right. And you can see that they've also had an enormous influence on some very big and important people. It's quite obvious that Elon Musk he's in the Putin camp. And, your friend, John Mearsheimer, this guy who used to be some sort of semi-respected academic, he's a blatant Putin shill. Almost everything that comes out of his mouth, it just sounds like pure shillery to me. And
I may be asking you to repeat yourself. What does Russia get out of promoting the dissident right in the West?
Basically, Russia has to fight dirty. They have an economy which before the war was about the size of Italy's. Then they're up against America and the rest of the West. Militarily, they can't really cope, except, they have some advantages like their readiness to sacrifice large numbers of people and so on. But militarily, in the age of modern technological warfare, Russia has to find a cheap, asymmetric way to cause confusion in the West. And, the Western societies, especially in the past, to a lesser degree now, were much more open. And the only feasible way that Russia could go toe-to-toe with the West was to use various kinds of Kremlin ops to destabilize and polarize Western societies. And, this is what they've been doing, and especially since 2014. In 2014, they really ramped up. If they can get Western people fighting about all sorts of cultural warfare issues, then that takes the West's eye off the ball, so to speak. There's all sorts of benefits to Russia to kind of stir up the shit with the dissident right. what they've done to the Republican Party. I mean, the Republican Party used to be the main sort of hawkish party in the United States. And by playing on this kind of underbed of ideas of America Firstism, they've managed to almost take over the Republican Party. Because, I mean, basically Trump is pushing their agenda. And this is now almost the dominant agenda in the Republican Party, at least while, Trump still has his power.
How significant is Putin's leadership as opposed to any other likely leader of Russia, particularly when it comes to Western interests?
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's say Vladimir Putin dropped dead tonight. How would that affect Western interests, Ukrainian interests, German interests, Polish interests, American interests if there was a different leader of Russia? Is Putin a singular threat, or is he just a representative of basic Russian interests?
I'd say the latter. I mean, it's not like Putin is this unique sort of Hitlerian figure. I think if you took down Putin, you'd still have the problem of Russia to deal with, but it would be an easier problem to deal with because right now Russia has to take a loss. That's the logic of the situation. Russia was hoping for a swift and easy and relatively painless victory in Ukraine. And right now, I think the number of Russian casualties killed and wounded is somewhere in the region of 400,000. So, and they've completely fucked up their economy, and they've moved to almost North Korean style of economic system to keep going. So Russia's pushing itself to the point of collapse, and they're going to reach that point of collapse if Putin is at the helm. But if Putin was removed, you could have a new guy who would obviously be part of the Russian deep state in the same way that Putin was, but you'd have a new guy who didn't have a tarnished reputation when it came to doing deals. It would be, okay, this is a new guy. They've revalued the Kremlin ruble here. Maybe we can do a deal with this guy. Maybe this guy will keep his deals. So the trouble with Putin is his credit as a deal maker is shot to shit. So this is the reason why people within the Russian administration, within the Russian deep state will be thinking like, maybe it's time to make a move and, get the knives out.
Is Russia a serious threat to Poland, to the Baltic states?
Well, I think if they succeed in driving America into a kind of isolationist mindset, then you've got all these European countries that don't always see eye to eye. They'll have to come up with a solution, a security solution that can keep Russia at bay. It's not really clear what that would look like. It'd probably mean a nuclear Germany, and then you'd have another problem, which would be the inherent dominance of Europe by Germany. So I don't know. These old historical patterns, they go away, but they kind of tend to come back in all sorts of interesting ways.
And is a strong NATO in America's interest? Is Trump just totally out to lunch with his frequent anti-NATO sentiments?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, right now, we've had an imperfect global system which has avoided major wars around the world, and that's generally been quite a good thing, I would say. If you remove the international system, then you have strong regional powers throwing their weight around. And that's going to lead to all sorts of breakdowns in law and order around the world, all sorts of conflicts and chaos, all sorts of disruption to the flow of trade and the economic well-being of the world. And of course, it'd be very, very interesting. But I think most people would instinctively be against that because it would probably hit their lifestyles extremely hard.
And do you think Donald Trump stands a good chance, say better than 40%, of becoming the next president of the United States?
No, I don't think so. I think his chances are probably more around less than 20%, I would say. I would say that they're probably even less than that. But, it's always very difficult to predict the future. The future is murky by its very nature. But I would say he has a diminishing chance of becoming president. I think he's not going to appeal to a lot of people. He won't have he won't have the funding. Most of his funding is being ripped away by these lawfare attacks. This is going to scare off a lot of his donors. The Biden campaign, the Democrats, they'll have a lot of money in the can. They'll be able to attack Trump quite successfully. when the election comes down to a head-to-head between Biden and Trump, if it does come down to a head-to-head between Biden and Trump, I think most people are going to make the safe choice and go with Biden again. Biden looks like a safe pair of hands. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't fly off the handle. He doesn't do some sort of crazy, unexpected shit. He seems to make his moves quite carefully. So I think that will appeal to a lot of voters.
What's your perspective on Tucker Carlson, and has it changed over time?
Well, I never really realized how stupid he was before, because, basically I used to hear Tucker going on about American politics, which is a bit stupid in itself. And so he sounded like he had a few good takes on American politics some years ago. And then it became more and more obvious that he was just trying to bait the boomers and, get all these boomers agitated so that they'd watch his show on Fox. And it started to become increasingly cringe at that time. And then he started to delve into these conspiracy theories. And then, it was only a matter of time before Fox fired him, I started to think at the time. And then we found out that he cost them about $700 million. So he became, at that point, a bit of an oddball fringe character. And then he started to push these ridiculous Russia-Putin narratives. Then he actually went to Russia. And then you kind of saw, okay, this is a guy who's now out of his depth, who doesn't understand what a fucking shopping trolley is, who doesn't understand the exchange rate between the ruble and the dollar. This guy was actually walking around Russia looking like an idiot. And maybe he's just playing to his idiotic audience because, his audience is actually as stupid as that. So maybe he's actually intelligent enough to know how a shopping trolley works. Maybe he's intelligent enough to know the basic economics involved in Russian supermarkets. So either he's stupid or his audience is incredibly stupid and he's just like playing to that. So those are the two possibilities that spring to mind there. If he's stupid and honest, then okay, he's a stupid guy, but he's sincere. So, he's not too bad. But if he's playing to his incredibly stupid audience and reinforcing their incredible stupidity and doing that in a cynical way to kind of generate views and to subvert American society, then he's a real POS. He's somebody that really deserves a Novichok sandwich, in my opinion.
What's a Novichok sandwich?
That's that interesting chemical commensable that Putin likes to feed to his ex-friends and challengers.
What do you think of the chances that Tucker Carlson becomes Trump's vice president?
Well, it's not impossible. But I don't think it would work because, in a way, Tucker's too much like Trump, and so he doesn't do anything to balance the ticket. He just reinforces the brand crazy.
Now, do you perceive right-wing discourse, right-wing punditry as significantly lower IQ generally than mainstream and left-wing commentary?
Now definitely, yeah. What we're seeing on the right wing is, honestly, it's embarrassing. It is very, very embarrassing. And anybody who's intelligent or who has a wish to kind of critique society is going to be kind of repelled by it. So, the right wing, by being weaponized for cheap shillery and polarization ops, has become an extremely cringe joke. So it's no wonder that anybody with any intelligence has left the dissident right, and it's increasingly looking like a freak show in a circus.
Do you have any thoughts on this guy who used to be known as Frame Game Radio, a.k.a. Mike Benz?
Yeah, well, he's somebody who believes that race is not immutable. That's what I know about him. Also, he believes that gender is not immutable as well. He thinks that a male can be a female can be a male, a black man can be a white man can be a black man, and it all doesn't really matter. That's what he basically believes. Recently, I was listening to a conversation he did with Richard Spencer. I think it was in 2018, which was on the Brundlefly cast. And basically, that was his position. Maybe it's not his sincere position, because the other thing we know about Frame Game is he's not really a sincere personality. He's somebody who's playing a false game.
How serious is dissident right support for the Palestinians?
The only thing that makes any difference between their attitude to the Palestinian conflict and their attitude to what's going on in the Sudan or Yemen or some other shithole country is that the Palestinians are, up against the Red Sea pedestrians. So that's the only thing that they really care about, a lot of them now. Anyway, Luke, I've got to go now.
Thanks for
just thought I'd check in and give the show a little bit of support, so you don't go away for another 3 weeks.
Thanks, Colin. Great to talk to you, man.
Okay, cheers, bye.